Welcome to another great episode of Mission Compliance, unleashing growth potential for defense contractors. In today's episode, we're exploring the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, or CMMC, and how its maturity levels are designed to advance cybersecurity across the entire defense supply chain. Whether you're a small business or a major contractor, understanding these levels is crucial for securing contracts and protecting sensitive information. Join us as we unpack what these levels mean, how they impact your business, and what steps you can take to advance through them. We are the knights who say, we're joined once again today by Mike Frieder, President of On-Call Compliance Solutions and a CMMC Professional Assessor. Thanks for joining us, Mike.
Hey, always a pleasure, Roman. That was impressive. I don't know what octave that was, but man.
I was trying to match the octave that they hit in the movie.
Ah,
So, Mike, today we're talking about CMMC maturity levels and what they mean. Some people out there might not know a lot about CMMC unless they've regularly been listening to this, or that there are even levels to it. So, with that being said, can you explain kind of what these CMMC maturity levels are and what they mean and how they're different, and anything that our audience needs to know?
yeah, awesome. I mean, I think I probably can't cover like everything about all levels, but as my good friend Flo Rida says, there are levels to this. There are definitely levels. So I think probably the best way to tackle this one is I'll give kind of a summary. I'll kind of tell you what's important, and then you know what, we'll dive into some more fun stuff. So there used to be in CMMC 1.0 at its beginning 5 levels. Oddly, level 2 and 4 had no purpose. I think they just wanted to like have some extra placeholders there. I'm not sure what they were thinking, but in any event, the DoD came and said, no, that's dumb. Let's not do that. Let's simplify it down to 3 levels. So there are now 3 levels. So CMMC level 1, 2, and 3. CMMC level 1 is basically equivalent to the FAR, or the Federal Acquisition Regulation Supplement. There's a 5200 series law out there that has 15 basic safeguarding controls. Things like you must have antivirus on your computer, and you can only allow authorized users to access the government contract and any specific information that's restricted of that nature. That applies to all government contractors, not just defense. And I think that's really important because CMMC is essentially being designed as a replacement or a third-party validation on the regulations already in existence from both the FAR, and then we get into the DFARS, or the Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation. It is designed as a great way to actually simplify things. And that's perhaps maybe one of my favorite parts about it is it actually really, like, when this thing all gets rolled out, God, they really take a long time doing it, but it will actually be a simpler, better thing. But CMMC level 1, it's basically equivalent to the FAR. It's going to be basically just self-attestation again. But there will be some differences. There will be some more meaty paperwork that owners or managers of businesses have to sign. So there's more accountability built in. There is a potential for an audit by an in-person assessor. There's just a little bit more weight to it, if you will. So CMMC 1, basically the other thing they did is they took 1 or 2 of the controls, the 15 controls in the FAR, and they expanded out to 17 total controls. So in case you're wondering, there is a slight numerical difference in the controls. There's 17 controls, but there's nothing materially net new. They just broke apart 1 or 2 of the controls to make them what they think is more clear. Nothing different you have to do as a contractor. So that's like your baseline, right? So that is equivalent to the FAR. Then you get into CMMC level 2. Full transparency, CMMC level 2 is kind of like where we live. We spend a good part of our lives working with CMMC level 2. I am a CMMC assessor. CMMC level 2, 110 controls, straight out of NIST SP 800-171, 330 assessment points. Still focused on NIST SP 800-171 revision 2 specifically. There is a revision 3, and the DoD put out a memo, said, don't worry about 3, just get to 2. And I think that's pretty reasonable because I don't think there's a lot materially in terms of extra protection you get in revision 3, and revision 3 just has become more extensive, to be honest with you. And that's the last thing that the defense industry needs. What they need is for it to be easier. Not going to happen. But It's based off NIST SP 800-171. Again, I think it's something like 330 different assessment points, 110 technical controls, and basically, the premise behind CMMC level 2 is it's all about protecting controlled unclassified information and everything under that umbrella. Where in CMMC level 1, they're primarily focused on just protecting the government contract and protecting non-public information that may be in that contract. CMMC level 2 goes a lot further, and it talks extensively about how you need to secure your system, the mechanisms you need to have in place, the training you need to have in place, a lot of specifics. I believe there's something like 14 or 17 control families in there. Again, the idea really is to provide a framework for a comprehensive, layered security approach in an effort to protect controlled unclassified information. So that's what it's all about. That's CMMC level 2. When we get to CMMC level 3, it becomes a little bit interesting because CMMC level 3 doesn't really necessarily have a lot more you have to do from a security perspective in terms of tools, but it does have a lot more you have to do from a security perspective in terms of practices. So it gets into what should your IT personnel be doing? What are the activities? What are the ongoing things that they should be doing in order to not just properly secure it, but then to properly secure, manage security, and really gets deeply into risk management. Now, I'll tell you, CMMC level 3, if you're listening to this podcast, probably doesn't apply to you at this moment. No one's being tested for CMMC level 3. CMMC level 3 right now, based on my understanding, can only be assessed by the DoD's DIBCAC assessors. And it is, again, for top priority projects. And honestly, it's just not really in use right now. It exists. The controls exist. There was at one point that CMMC 1.0 had 170 controls at level 5. Wow, that's all I can say. And again, a lot of those remaining differential controls between 110 and 170, those 60 extra controls, really a lot of it was, day-to-day procedures for monitoring and managing risk. So I think that's a pretty solid, kind of brief synopsis about the 3 levels and kind of their purpose. Again, I think if you're listening to this podcast, there's just such a small chance that CMMC level 3 will ever apply to you that I really don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it. And it's good for you to know that it's probably not a target unless you specifically see that requirement in a contract of yours. Now, I will tell you, at OnCall, we do have good experience working at CMMC level 3. It used to be CMMC level 5. We can run the tabletop exercises. We can do the advanced security configuration review with you. We can do a lot of the things that are even in level 3 as an outsourced third party. So there is a lot of utility. I don't want to downplay it. It's just, be really honest with you guys, there's no market demand for CMMC level 3. Unless you're just a total security company like we are, you're probably not going to have level 3 practices implemented. It just doesn't make sense, and it definitely doesn't make financial sense. We are actually in line with level 3 based on the way that we monitor and manage our systems. But that's just because we are a security company and we think that we ought to lead by example. And there's definitely some overkill and some extra expense in our operation because of that. But I think it's worth it. We sleep real good at night here. So that's pretty good synopsis, I think.
I'd say so. That was pretty detailed, and I don't think anyone out there, I don't think anyone listening would be disappointed by that answer. The next thing might be a little bit of a softball, especially for those who listen to this podcast or watch our YouTube channel. But how does CMMC compliance benefit companies beyond just meeting government requirements?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is, competitive differentiator, right? So we use things like DFARS and NIST compliance along with CMMC certification to help our clients gain competitive differentiation. If you've got a competitor and you're in a bid situation and you are DoD level secure and the other company is not, you're going to win that bid in a lot of cases because people really care about the security of their partners in this day and age. 10 years ago, not very many companies had supply chain risk management. Post-pandemic, supply chain risk management is a huge deal, particularly for if you're out there gunning for larger clients or the government. They really want you to be stable because if you're not stable, guess what? It's a problem. So I think that's a pretty serious consideration as far as I'm concerned. And it just simply wins contracts. That's all there is to it. So that's one way. I think another way is honestly just really working hard to make your company a more stable company. I think that if you've worked hard to build your business and you've got, anywhere from 1 to 63,000 employees who depend upon that paycheck being there next week, I don't take that lightly. I don't take that lightly at all. I think that's something where you've just got to really remember that when you build a business and you employ people, there's a hefty responsibility to take care of those people. And cybersecurity is I think probably one of the top ways to do that because I got to tell you, if the company can't make payroll tomorrow, it's a problem for everybody involved, and it's just not really very expensive, from an overall perspective to properly handle cybersecurity. It is a just normalized business expense, and so I think from this perspective, CMMC provides a huge advantage in terms of just company stability. That's the whole reason the government makes this a law, is because it's mandatory that you are stable and able to make it to tomorrow. So I think from that perspective, it's huge. And then I think, honestly, one of my favorite parts about this is it really helps a company to mature. If you're a small to mid-sized business and you don't know what it's like to run like a large business, this is a really great primer on how you can act like a bigger business from an IT and security perspective. I know for us in the early days, we didn't even know what a SIEM solution was, right? Why in the world do you need one of those? Why do you need to know what's going on in your network all the time? But the funny thing is, you don't make it to a big company without having that in place. It just doesn't happen. So from that perspective, I do find that it's a really great vehicle to mature your company to the next level and learn how larger companies operate. And it's really good education, especially for executives when they take it to heart.
Absolutely. On the flip side of that, what are the potential risks for companies that fail to meet the required CMMC level for their contracts?
Yeah, I mean, so that one's kind of obvious, right? So number one is massive fines for false claims penalties. We were on the phone with a company, just last week. We said, "Hey, how much your business is defense?" They said 20 to 25%. I said, "Okay, all right, ballpark, how much is that?" And they said, "Oh, about 40 million." I said, "Okay, well, how about what would happen if $40 million just disappears out of your bottom line? Is how many people are we laying off, or are we even going to be in business the next day?" He said, "No, we wouldn't be in business the next day. Our whole profit margin in our company is 12%." And a lot of people just don't really consider that kind of stuff that, when you've got a large single source like the government, even though it's broken up into many, many individual entities, you wind up screwing up and blackballing yourself. It can really hurt a lot of people. I think that's one thing. Then you've got the fines, right? The fines can be triple the amount of contract, right? And then plus an $11,000 per incident, which is every file that's CUI that got released. So let's just take that $40 million and multiply it by like three, right? You got a $120 million fine potential. So, you know, all I can tell you is, when national security is at risk, you just can't fool with this stuff. Just get compliant. Hey, look, I don't care if you use our company or not. I'd like you to use our company. I'd like to help you guys out there with compliance for sure. But if you're in the defense industry and you say to yourself, I don't have to do this and CMMC is never going to happen, whatever, you don't belong in the defense industry. Stop taking the dollars, wind down the jobs, get the heck out, right? You shouldn't be here. Um, and these rules are here for a reason. They need to be taken seriously. And I don't mean to get up on a soapbox about it, but man, it's just, when we start heading that direction of like, what's the dangers of not, being ready for CMMC, which is to say, what are the dangers of not complying with DFARS and NIST, which have been lost since 2017? Again, all I can just say to you is like, you don't belong here. You don't have the maturity to belong here as a business, and you shouldn't be here. You should not put our country at risk, not having your information secured. So yeah, big, major, complicated, nasty consequences. One last one is what I'll call whistleblower penalties. So, a lot of times the way these lawsuits come out is you got somebody who's maybe in the IT department, they know the right thing to do, and they're trying to get budget, trying to get budget, trying to get budget. Finally, the company just says, no, we're just not going to do it. And that person leaves the company, turns around and sues them for not doing the right thing. And they take home something like, I don't remember what it was, but it's like 30% of whatever the settlement is. They take that home as a whistleblower. It's so we gotta like chat GPT the answer to what the percentage is, but it's not small, right? So again, let's play out the scenario. You're if you're willingly not doing the right thing, you're giving in that example of a company doing 40 million in defense work, they get a 3x penalty, 120 million, and then the whistleblower guy's got a 30% incentive to go tell on you if you're not doing the right thing as the CEO or an executive. It's like a $38 million payday for that guy. I'll leave that job. I'll go testify on the stand that you refused me funding in my program to put the right security in place, like in a heartbeat. Um, so yeah, there aren't just consequences. There's like incentives to make it known who the people are who are not getting with this. And so I think again, if you're an executive out there, you should really know that. If you're a listener out there, and there's a lot of you, um, your company needs to do the right thing. That's kind of just the bottom line. National security is a risk, big
Mhm.
consequences.
Absolutely. And Mike, this is a little bit different today. We usually do 3 questions and a silly question. We have a bonus question here. So we have 4 questions and a silly question. And the last question is this. A lot of defense is not only living in the present and fulfilling your contracts and doing that kind of thing, but a lot of defense is looking forward to what the next thing might be, the next innovation, the next movement. So with that being said, how do you see potentially CMMC evolving in the future, and what impact will that have on defense contractors?
It's a good question. It's a good question. How do I see it evolving? So, CMMC level one, I don't think it's gonna evolve. It's gonna stay static unless the FAR changes. So I think that's pretty straightforward. CMMC level two, um, I will say it's interesting to me that NIST revision 3 has come out and the DoD put out a memo saying, no, 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 we're focused on revision 2. We can't make this big leap. Um, Eventually they'll have to make the leap. There's just no question about it. So eventually I see it evolving to utilize NIST revision 3, but I think we're years off of that. I think the big place that we really see it evolving is just in getting into action. November of this year, we are supposed to see it actually get written into law, and it's going to happen. Q1 of next year, contracts go out with these requirements. I think that we will see it start out with a lot of self-attestation at level 2 with increased executive requirement. And I believe you will begin to see more and more and more contracts go from self-attestation to third-party verification required to win the work. That's what I believe we will see. And that's going to take years, but it's going to start next year. We're only 4 months to the end of the year, and we're just not really all that far away. So I think that's one thing that is a very serious consideration for defense companies. There are a lot of companies who have been kicking the can down the road, not taking it seriously. They don't have a gun to their head to do this. Um, they do. They just completely don't understand the consequences of false claims and that the government is actually going after people for it. So that also makes it complicated, right? Like it's one thing to have the penalties, but it's like walking across the road and not knowing there's train tracks there and there's a train coming. If you're just walking across the road and you refuse to look to the right and you get hit by a train, well, you just didn't know, right? So there may have been signs, but you just didn't know. So I think in that regard, yeah, it's just I think that the evolution of this will evolve in the direction of ITAR. If you release ITAR data to a foreign national, you go to jail, like hardcore jail time. It would be easy for me to foresee them eventually evolving this into if you claim that your system is secure and it's not, it will not just be a financial penalty. It could be jail time. It could be, what I'll call gross or malevolent activity. That you have purposely lied to the government about how secure your data handling capabilities are, and they could put you in jail. Now, I don't know that that's going to happen soon. But I know that ITAR came out in 1976, and I know that now it's 2024 and they're putting people in jail for it. So maybe it takes 10, 20 years. But not securing your stuff is as good as handing the data over to our enemies, and that's really problematic. So a lot to unfold there. I do again, I think the major one is just at some point we'll go to revision 3 of NIST, but it could be years. It really could. But there's a lot of activity going on right now, a lot of things that are getting up to date because we're actually rolling this thing out for real this time. So the next 6 months are going to be very interesting to watch.
All right, Mike, you crushed our bonus question, and now we're going to finish the way we usually do with our silly question to kind of lighten things up. And I have to say, this is a good one. You know, Mike, you've got young kids. We've talked about this particular character on this podcast before, but with CMMC having so many levels, how do you think someone like Super Mario would fare against these particular levels? Would he need any power-ups or extra lives to get through them?
Well, I would have to say so. I think there's, I was listening to a seminar from this guy named Myron Golden. He's like a business entrepreneur kind of guy. I really like him a lot. And he was giving this analogy, and the analogy kind of goes like this. If you have far to go, there's a lot of different vehicles that you can take. So, for instance, you can walk across town, and it might take forever, especially if you live in a big city like Jacksonville, Florida, where I'm at. Walking across Jacksonville could maybe take you days, but you could also ride a bike, and you could maybe get there in a day, or you could take a car and maybe you could get there in 30 minutes. Maybe you take a helicopter, you can get there in 10. So I think the big thought when it comes to CMMC is, what is the vehicle that you're going to take? So you could try to do this yourself. And it's a long, arduous journey that I think would easily take you 12 to 24 months just to wrap your head around it, let alone get it implemented. I think you can buy a templated solution, one of these like document storage locker things. You pay them $500 a month, and they're secure, and you can store stuff there securely, but there's not really any expert to actually help you figure it out. They just got a template. you know, I think it'd take you forever to do it that way too. And worse, now you're paying money. Um, or you can jump aboard, the on-call helicopter and get airlifted into success, in a short matter of a couple of days. And that's really, I think, what we've designed is the ability to get from A to B a whole lot more efficiently, right? Like so much more efficiently that in every case that I know of, when we've worked with a client, they've easily been able to recoup the money that they spent on us very easily. One of two ways. One is they write it into their cost in their contract, um, or use one of our other defined methods, and we have several to wind up getting the government to ultimately pay for this, or a prime to pay for this. Or two, they're able to win more business, allowing them to more than cover any costs of working with us and getting compliant. And we show you how to do that. And I think that's really what it boils down to is if you need to get from where you are at your house to downtown, do you want to walk, ride a bike, take a car, you want to take a helicopter? And I think, if we're choosing what vehicle we're in, we want to take the helicopter, and we just want to go and get there efficiently, fast, so that we can go get back to work and what we normally do. And so I think that's really, how I'd kind of summarize that is in any journey you have in life, the question is, how do you want to get to your destination? Eventually, you'll probably wind up there if you keep working at it. Gosh, there are just better ways to do it.
In true Mike fashion, taking a question that was about something completely different and making it relevant to our topic. Thanks, Mike. And that wraps up another great episode of Mission Compliance. We hope our discussion today has provided you with valuable insights, practical strategies, and inspiration to navigate the ever-evolving world of defense. We'd like to thank Mike for joining us and walking us through the levels of CMMC certification. Thanks, Mike.
Hey, always a pleasure, Roman.
But the conversation doesn't end here. We encourage you to continue exploring these topics and connect with us via our social media channels. Share your thoughts, ask questions, and engage with fellow listeners using the hashtag Mission Compliance Podcast. If they haven't already, what should they do, Mike?
Well, they should definitely like it, subscribe, and tell a friend, because you know what? The more people we get listening, the more people we are able to help. And that's what we really live for around here.
Just like he said, take a minute to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform, because it lets you know when new episodes like this one are released. We truly appreciate it if you could take a moment to rate and review the show. Your feedback helps us to continue to bring you thought-provoking episodes and high-quality content. Join us next time as we delve further into the dynamic world of defense, security, and industry innovation. Until then, take care, stay informed, and make compliance your mission. See you next time.
Thanks, everybody.